But you're writing from a woman's point of view, and you're writing about principal characters who are generally women. The record then, and the record since often, is actually written by men.
Absolutely.
So that requires an even greater imaginative effort with the available evidence.
It requires two things. One is that I read the record, which is written not just by men, but often by men who hate women. It's an incredibly misogynistic record. It's very hard. There's one biography which I've used extensively, which is by Professor David Baldwin, on Elizabeth Woodville, and he actually likes Elizabeth, and he's generous to her. He's a modern man, you know, he's working today, and he is, you know, he in a sense cuts her a bit of slack, you know, so when she does step into her positions of power, he doesn't see that as a bad thing to do. He sees that as an understandable thing to do. If you read the Victorians on Elizabeth Woodville, or you read the Tudors on Elizabeth Woodville, it's a story about a woman who is probably a witch, who perhaps, you know, seduced her husband unfairly using witchcraft, whose craze for power took him to, you know, disaster, and who almost rightly lost her children. I mean, it's a very, very judgmental, pejorative history. So I have to read, these are my sources, I have to read them, but I read them with like a pinch of salt, and sometimes a fistful of salt, sometimes, you know, a woman's dozen, you know, a jar of salt, and say, okay, these are the facts. We're pretty sure that she put her family into places of power. But then part of the creation of the fiction is I sit in her shoes, as it were, and I go, if I had been her, would I have put my family into power? Or would I have done, as these historians seem to think I ought to do, would I have sat meekly by and let other people influence the king and let other people be guardians for my sons? No. I have to protect my family, I have to protect myself, I want to protect the king. The best way I can do this is by getting the power in my hands and out to my kinsfolk. This is, you know, makes sense. It makes sense for her as a political being. It doesn't make sense for her as a meek and mild woman.